a regular conversation and so forth. And we could got this podcast started like a half hour ago. Let me tell you something. She is loaded with ammunition and ready for our discussion. So, welcome. I'm Dr. Kerry Neal, host and moderator of Urban Birds and Bees. But before we get started, so the topic of our conversation tonight is something that is fairly sobering. There's a lot of stuff been going on in the news. We're talking about surviving abusive love, and we want to make sure we put love in air quotes, right? Um, but before we kind of dive into our topic, I want to kind of start the conversation off with some information that I think will be somewhat sobering, enlightening, um, provocative to say the least, but it's something we really need to um, be aware of because we want to make sure we're not grounded in assumptions, just not antidotes, but in reality. Okay, so domestic violence is not rare and it is not isolated and it is not always visible. Listen to these statistics. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 4 men in the United States will experience severe intimate partner violence in their lifetime. 1 in 4 women, 1 in 7 men. On a typical day, more than 20,000 calls are made to domestic violence hotlines across the country. On a typical day, just on a Tuesday, 20,000 calls. Every minute, approximately 20 people are physically abused by an intimate partner. Every minute. 5 minutes pass, 100 people experience that. In terms of mortality, over 1,500 women are killed each year in the U.S. by a current or former partner. That's roughly 3 to 4 women every single day. And when we begin to dig deeper into the data, the picture becomes even more sobering. Black women, in particular, experience domestic violence at rates 30 to 50% higher than white women and are disproportionately represented among domestic violence homicide victims. Oh, Amparo, I definitely want you to speak on some of that. Women living in low-income households are significantly more vulnerable, with rates of abuse nearly 3 times higher than those in higher income brackets. Education does not fully insulate risk either. Um, Abuse cuts across all levels, but women without a college degree experience higher rates of severe physical violence, I should say. Now, that being said, perhaps the most important of tonight's conversation, and I want to make a little distinction here, right? Um, Based on the research that came out of the the peer research, Pew, not peer, Pew, PEW. Um, Psychological and emotional abuse often precedes physical violence, and yet it is the least recognized and the most normalized. And there's something even very interesting about that. And I'm going to Amparo bring that up in just a few minutes. Um, so when we talk about abuse tonight, I just want to make this very clear. We're not just talking about extreme cases. We're talking about the subtle, the quiet, the unspoken, the kind that doesn't leave bruises necessarily, but restructures how a person sees themselves. Because the truth is, you cannot heal what you don't recognize. And too many people in situations, or excuse me, are in situations that don't look broken on the outside, but internally, everything is unraveling. So that's what tonight's conversation is about, not just about relationships, but the conditions that shape how we love, how we tolerate, and ultimately what we believe we deserve. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce everyone to Amparo Vazquez, who is the founder and executive director of the Women's Survivors Network. Amparo, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Kerry. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for joining us on tonight's podcast. And let me just say a little bit about Empower because she's pretty incredible. Got a chance to meet her through a mutual colleague that we have. Um, um, And it's been a delight getting to know her and learn about her very inspirational work. So, Amparo Vazquez is the founder and executive director of the Women's Survivors Network, a survivor led nonprofit dedicated to helping women, excuse me, to helping women understand abuse and trauma, heal and rebuild their heal and rebuild after harm, reclaim their power, and ultimately grow into leaders who help transform the system that once failed them. She's a Mexican American woman, child of immigrants, and a first generation low income graduate of the Stanford University and George Washington University. Uh, what it says, what you guys say? Was it Fight on Farm? Where you guys call yourself the farm, right?
Oh yeah, the farm. Yeah.
Up there, yeah, exactly right. So Empower's work goes deeply, excuse me, Empower's work is deeply informed by her lived experience surviving abuse, navigating trauma, recovery, and overcoming systematic adversity. She is passionate about building survivor-informed solutions, developing future leaders, and creating systems rooted in empathy, safety, and justice. Now, through the Women Survivors Network, Empower is building something far greater than a support system. She is creating a pipeline, ladies and gentlemen, from victim to survivor to leader, helping women not only heal, but rise into positions of influence and impact. Tonight's conversation will go beyond the surface. We'll explore why so many high capacity women still find themselves in unhealthy relationships. We're going to talk about how trauma, scarcity, and self perception shape our dating and relationship choices. Ooh, can't wait to talk about that. And the hidden forms of abuse that often go unrecognized. And lastly, what true healing actually requires, right? Not just emotionally, but structurally. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Amparo Vazquez. Give her a big round of applause. Woo! The crowd goes wild. So, let's just kind of start a discussion. Let's kind of jump right in, right?
Yeah.
So, um, let's talk about this for a second. Let's talk about why so many high capacity women still find themselves in unhealthy relationships. Let's just kind of start there before we really get into the nitty gritty of domestic violence. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. So in order to answer that question, I want to paint a little bit of a broad picture. So
Okay.
referencing some of the statistics that you presented at the very beginning,
Okay.
abuse is very common. It's more common than what you presented because often those statistics are underreported. Often they focus on physical abuse, and physical abuse is one small subset of the entire world of abuse. And
Mm,
the reality is that the vast majority of abuse is emotional and mental. And the reality is that the forms of abuse that are the hardest to heal and the hardest to be able to pinpoint and characterize are mental and emotional. And when we're talking about predators, right? So not just your run-of-the-mill abuser of, let me correct myself, not the person that is harming from a place of ignorance or in the moment dysregulation, but like an intentional act of abuse, right?
mm,
They have a certain profile of what they look for because they're looking to use someone. They're looking for someone that they can extract from. And for that, there's there are a few elements that have to.
Wait a minute. Yeah, I was gonna say, go into that. We said they're looking for a certain type of person. I mean,
Yeah.
go. Let's talk about that. What does that look like?
Someone that has a lot to give and someone that has low barriers, low boundaries to give it to the wrong person.
Give me
So
an example. Give me an example.
So to your point, empathic, very resourceful women were often targeted by predators because we are very giving, because we are very empathic, because we shower people in our lives with love and care, because we provide financial resources, because we connect people to our networks. We'll give and give and give and give and
Mm,
have a high capacity to give. So that is a beautiful thing. This is why the very last part of my organization, the pipeline that you reference is leaders. Those should be the leaders, the people who are very empathic, service oriented. That's it, right? But those people, when they have imposter syndrome, when they have worthiness wounds, when they have people pleasing tendencies, when they have psychological wounds that they're not aware of, and they come into view of someone who's looking for someone to use, they'll be targeted because they have so much to give and low wall to give
Hmm.
to the wrong person.
Now, look, okay, so here's what I want you to do because I want to make this third grade clear to everybody. Okay, let's just kind of role play. Well,
Yeah.
not I'm gonna role play with you, but you just want to present the situation.
Yeah.
Give me an example of how someone, particularly a predator in this sense,
Yeah. Yeah.
would how the conversation would go, or just not necessarily like say the guy that you imitating the guy, then you imitate the woman, no. But the
Yeah.
fact is, what would that look like in actual communication and exchange where he had said, "Oh, okay, I see this," and so forth. And what would that look like?
Testing. So, in your very first conversation with someone like this, they'll test you to see if you have good boundaries. You'll
Mm,
second guess yourself if they can gaslight you, even just a little bit in the moment, to see how you respond, to see how you respond to a little insult, to see how you'll respond to any one of these tactics that they get more and more extreme over time. Very first conversation. They're trying to see,
mm,
are you someone that I can use? And you said bring it down to a third grade level, right? If you're a lion, which gazelle are you going to chase? The really thin gazelle or the juicy, meaty gazelle, right? For a predator, the predator being the lion, a really juicy, meaty gazelle is someone that has a lot to give, the very things that they're looking for, right? So, someone who's going to boost their ego, someone who's going to give them a false, an externalized sense of confidence, someone that's going to give them financial resources, someone that's going to make them look good, right? That's the juicy, meaty part, and that's what they shoot for. That's what they look for, and they go for the hunt.
That's interesting too, because you said you said they look at how you would respond to an insult. That is insightful. I kind of think about how like we as guys, let's say not me necessarily, not me,
Not
but
you.
not me, but some guys may go on the first date with somebody, right? And
Yeah.
then so, you walk her to her door or something like that, and then he may say, can I come in and watch TV for a little bit? Can I get something to drink? Or whatever the case may be. And probably how you respond to that question, he's already getting a sense, oh, yeah, she's easy or not, whatever else. This is going to be a hard thing. She's a real thing, whatever I'm going to ask for a second
Yeah.
date, whatever else. So that's interesting. Wow, wow.
Yeah.
That,
So,
that, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
sorry to interrupt. What I was going to say is you're speaking to the way that this behavior is seeded into the culture and then normalized. And so there's a lot of tactics that I endured in harm that were really extreme. Extreme gaslighting, extreme smearing, extreme invalidation, a lot of terms that when you're an abuse survivor, you learn these terms very quickly. But when I came out of abuse, I realized, oh my God, these tactics are really widespread, including by people that they don't have the same motivation, they don't have the same intention. And I saw it rampant across the world of men as a whole, including, to your point, just the average ordinary dude. And I realized there's a whole study behind this of how things get seeded into a culture, get planted into a culture, and then become normalized over time. And it doesn't take that long. Cultures can change in a matter of even months, to be quite honest, depending on what is happening. And so what you're describing is exactly of that, but a minor form of that, right? Pushing those boundaries, pushing it. Is this person going to let me get away with this? You actually remind me of a date that I went on a few years ago with someone who I had really good chemistry with. We had great experience. And
Okay.
then he started testing my boundaries, pushing my boundaries, seeing how much I would let him get away with. And my heart was racing because I was still fresh from the experience of abuse. So my mind still associated pushing boundaries with torture, which I don't use terms like torture lightly. The level of abuse that I sustained was torture and brainwash. So my
Mm,
nervous system came to associate certain things that are considered very normal, very, but even very benign with torture. And so I said no to him at the end of the date, and he sent me a text, and I could tell during the date he was an average, ordinary, good guy, right?
right.
So he sent me a text afterwards and he said, I'd love to get feedback to understand like where we went wrong, basically. And he didn't say we, he really was approaching it from like, I want to know what happened, right?
Right.
So I I risked it because very often my experience is that when I provide feedback to men, they get angry at me. So that's another normal thing that you experience the extreme version of that in abuse, but it's widespread amongst the culture of men. Men, as a whole, my experience is very often men don't like to receive feedback from women. That's a whole other subtopic. But I risked it.
I was like, wait, let's dive into that. What do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah. That's exactly right, right?
Yeah,
So we can
right.
get into that as well. But so I sent an actual text, like 2 or 3 paragraphs of a text saying essentially that, like the culture of men trains men to, instead of finding someone whose boundaries meet their own, finding someone who does want to sleep with you on the first date and then respecting that person, valuing that person, you're trained to look for the person who presents a sort of challenge to you, who says no to you, and then trains you to push against those boundaries and push and push and push and push. And this is
Mm,
just normal. This is how we've existed as a collective on this planet for a very, very, very long time. It's how I was raised as well. I didn't know the word boundary until I got to college. And the concept was completely foreign to me. And it led to a lot of uh, social issues, a lot of interpersonal problems, because I literally did not understand that if someone says no, I have to respect it. And that I have the ability to say no, and that I have the ability to expect someone to respect that no. It took me a really long time to start to process that. And I still have issues with boundaries because my entire upbringing, I got all of these messages and in all sorts of different forms, right? Songs, movies, messages from my family,
right.
normalized messages from my culture, but then also just how men treated me. I was I was expected to allow them to have access to really uncomfortable touch to my body because I was expected to. And I didn't experience sexual violence as a child, but these experiences of like men hitting me on the butt or grabbing my arm or getting really close to me, it was really disconcerting, really uncomfortable, and my
Sure.
nervous system responds to that. But I was told, don't say anything, shut your mouth. So I
Hmm.
learned to suppress all of this instead. And so it was 18 years of that training. And then college came and I was like, what is this? What is this word?
And,
What
and the
new
suppression you
idea?
would say is a byproduct of the culture in many ways, form and fashion as well. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's interesting. One thing I thought you were talking about in terms of the what men look for is nothing that's easy. Was that song a long time ago by Tupac? I Get Around. He said, um, "I don't want it if it's that easy." This whole performance thing, whether it's more innate for men or at the culture where it's all
Yes,
about performance and everything's measured and
yes,
things of that nature, that kind of rolls over to the dating
yes,
thing as well, sounds like, huh?
yes. Which then is dehumanizing for the women
Mm,
and for the men. But it's easier for the women to understand that they're being dehumanized in that. It's harder for the men. And you'll see that dynamic play out in a lot of respects, a lot of different classifications of people where one is more considered the oppressed group and one group is considered more of the oppressor group. Both groups are being dehumanized, but it's easier for the oppressed group, the obviously oppressed group, to be able to understand that they're being dehumanized. So I've been objectified and dehumanized my entire life as
mm,
by all kinds of men, from very well-meaning, like again, average ordinary dude to psychopathic predator. And there's just so many different kinds of harm that's done. And a lot
right.
of it is unintentional. A lot of it comes from ignorance. A lot of it comes from ego wounding. A lot of it comes from lack of self-examination. And one of
Yeah.
the things that I'm really excited about right now is that I'm starting to see cracks in walls that I never would have expected, even like
Wow.
5 or 10 years ago. There's a lot of pressure now that's building on men from women. Women finally saying, "This is harmful. This is unacceptable. No, do your thing," right? And that's building a lot of pressure in the moment and a lot of discomfort. But what I'm experiencing on my end, in several respects, not just with regards to this, is I'm excited to see what's going to come next because
Mm,
there's a pressure that's building inside of a system. That means that there's more of a chance for the system to actually start to see some form of change. How
yeah.
change will come about, we will see. But this is the first time that I'm seeing so many women finally saying, this is unacceptable. It's the first time that I'm seeing so many men saying this is unacceptable. It's the first time that I'm seeing so many men also say, you know what, this system doesn't work for me either. This system
Yeah.
trained me to swallow my emotions. This system trained me to normalize violence towards myself, towards others. This system trained me to not feel human in my own body and to not know what to do about it. Those things are systemic and they harm
Mm.
us on such a deep and visceral level. And so for things to start to be heading toward the direction of like you have no choice but to change at a systemic level, I have my popcorn out. I'm very curious what's going to happen next.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. If you just join us, we're here with Amparo Vazquez, and she is the founder and the executive director of the Women's Survivors Network, and we're talking about surviving abusive love. So let's kind of go, and if you can indulge us, give us sort of a sneak peek of your experience growing up. Let's talk. You kind of talked about it a little bit, but just maybe talk about a little bit more how you grew up, and maybe just sort of give us sort of the Reader's Digest version of maybe some encounters that you've had to kind of let your inspiration starting the organization, the Women's Survivors Network.
Yeah, so I grew up in South Central LA. To your point, first generation and or low income and
Mhm.
low income.
Mhm.
I grew up in the hood, and I grew up to an immigrant family in an immigrant heavy population, Black and brown families. A lot of harm inside the home, a lot of it intentional, a lot of
Sure.
it outside the home, mixture of both outside the home. I grew up around gangs. I couldn't exit the house on my own. I couldn't wear shorts, dresses. If something happened to me, it would have been my fault. I grew up with stories about women being kidnapped and raped, hearing gunshots. This was my environment growing up. And then I experienced a lot of harm inside of schools as well, a lot of bullies, people targeting me that I didn't understand it at the time. So I was exposed to a lot of different kinds of harm growing up, but I didn't have difference of class experiences until I was about 16. So the differences that I was aware of that I could point to growing up was differences in how women treated women and women treated men, and that matrix of how women are treated by everyone and how men were treated by everyone. And
Mm.
and yeah. So I paid a lot of attention to that. And one of the things that I noticed was a lot of different forms of what I didn't understand to be at the time oppression, systemic oppression towards women. So that's what I was very in tune with growing up. I had a strong,
And I assume your peers as well as that they're kind of were victims of that same type of pressure as well. Is that correct?
my peers. What do you mean, my peers?
Well, just any people you grew up with in your neighborhood, in terms of the other
Yeah,
women and things of that nature. So that's what I'm
yeah.
thinking.
They did, but most people didn't talk about these things. I've been the lone ranger in a lot of senses of having these conversations in spaces where most people didn't have these conversations, and I noticed that people started talking about it afterwards. So it's a less of a lonely experience now. Uh,
Sure.
but no, I think what people did was they would complain or they would speak from a place of pain when it came to these experiences. And I had a strong sense of justice. I had a strong sense of service. I was a very protective individual, very much willing to harm myself in order to help another. That's who I've always been. Uh,
Mm.
Something that I had to pull myself out of because there's a lot of harm that you can endure in the process of trying to help another. So that was my upbringing. And then I got to college, and I was an ardent feminist in college because of what I had grown up with of seeing a lot of harm towards women. I
So,
saw,
what led you maybe to you being a feminist is kind of what you saw growing up, which you was like say that this is your way of sort of being a hero, so to speak. Is that correct?
yeah,
Uh,
very much. So. Yeah. And going to Stanford was it was such an incredible experience. There's just no way that my life would have turned out
well,
in the
the first
positive
thing
way.
too, you were out the hood and you went to like one of the top colleges, not in the nation, but in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Very big difference that I could suddenly walk around at night. I could suddenly wear shorts. So huge difference in my experience versus the average other woman's experience. So we had this event that was called Take Back the Night, where a group of women and allies would walk at night to take it back because women are so often scared at night. And it was such a interesting experience for me because I was absolutely head and above in terms of the level of danger that I had been exposed to at
Sure.
night growing up.
Sure.
So that was my experience. And when I was in college, I worked for the Women's Center. It was my first job. It was a fantastic job. It had such a deep feeling of purpose and belonging. And I was a sexual assault prevention program coordinator. So my job was
Mhm.
literally to learn about abusive, harmful, toxic relationships and harmful situations and help other people to navigate their way out of it or prevent it.
So,
And
so I'm assuming when you worked there well, on campus at Stanford in the Women's Abuse Center, what was it called again? The Women's Abuse Center? That was it called?
it's the Women's Community Center.
Community Center. Okay, not abuse. That wouldn't be the good marketing ploy at all. But the thought is you hadn't yet really experienced other than maybe the cultural stuff that's woven into the culture of growing up in terms of where what's normalized, dysfunction is normalized, but you hadn't really encountered a situation as of yet that you would characterize as being an abuse scenario, or have you? Or
No,
did I
I
get
had,
that wrong?
I had a
You
lot
had
of it.
okay, you had okay. So
And
that addition was motivation for you to
yeah,
be more involved. Got it. Okay, I'm
yeah,
sorry. Go ahead.
inside the home and outside the home.
Okay.
What I had not been exposed to was the level of psychopathic predatory behavior that I encountered later on as an adult.
Did
Uh,
they address that in the women's center on campus?
no one did.
It was all
No,
physical. If yeah, interesting. Okay,
it
go ahead.
was
I'm sorry.
well, it was physical abuse and emotional abuse, I would say. I knew about the extent of physical abuse and some emotional abuse and some verbal abuse. And even that was more than the average person knew. So I thought I knew about enough of the world of relationships and harm to be able to avoid it. And no, I didn't. There's so much about the experience of harm that is not widely known. People don't know about the experience of gradually being groomed, gradually having your sense of self broken, gradually having your understanding of reality broken, gradually having your identity replaced at its core.
Hmm.
There's a gradual process of, like I said, grooming that victims undergo, especially when you're dealing with a very highly calculated strategic person. And no, no one, I wasn't exposed to that idea at all.
Interesting.
Oh, I lived through it
Interesting.
myself. Yeah.
Wow.
And so I went to the experience, had a really great time, had a couple of great years afterwards, and then I found myself being ensnared by someone that I thought was a soulmate. There was this really strong feeling of connection, like is the case for every single abuse victim. We all have the experience of this feeling of intensity at first, this feeling of meant to be. Uh, there's there's reasons behind that that have to do with the tactics that abusers employ in order to lure someone in. They try to get their claws into you as quickly as possible, and so they shower you. They employ a tactic called love bombing. So they shower you with praise, they shower you with gifts, they shower you with whatever it is that they see that you respond to in order to hook you in. But like I said at the very beginning, they're also testing you. So they're testing
And this person you would characterize as being more of a predator in terms of kind of seeking you out and things of that nature. One thing I thought, and I'll let you finish your thought in a second, but the thought is there was some level of training, and I really want you to, as simple as possible, right? Third grade level, whatever else, to talk about that experience on how almost like death by a thousand paper cuts, so to speak. How this person was able to lure you in to uh, accomplish his goal. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So there was strategy that was being employed from the very beginning that I didn't know. So he triangulated. Triangulation is when you use a third party in order to achieve your goal. So it doesn't look like you yourself did something.
A
He
third party. Interesting.
used the support of a friend of mine in order to convince me to be open to him as a dating partner. Again, it's not unusual, right? People talk to each other to, hey, can you talk to your friend about me so that I can get her number? It's not
But that
unusual.
but that person, but that third party is not necessarily understanding what their ultimate goal is. They just think
Oh,
like they just need some help because they like you. They want you to be open to them. Got it. Okay.
yes. And so what I experienced was an intensity from that point forward. Again, it made me think that this person was my soulmate. I also started bumping into this person randomly on the street. I thought I was a very spiritual person. I was spiritual at the time. I still am now, but much more complicated understanding of things now. At the
Okay,
time, I thought I'm bumping into this person on the street. It's meant to be. God is putting us together. Life is putting us together.
got it.
And it was after abuse that I realized no, I was being stalked. This person was studying my behavior. He was studying my patterns to be able to figure out where I was going to be at X point in time so that he could just happen to
When
be
did you recognize that? When did that become? He's stalking me. When did that
after I
happen?
left, after I escaped.
All was after you left. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of these tactics, I had no idea what they were. So I didn't have labels for them. It wasn't until near the very end of that experience that I found the label codependent. And for the first time, I really processed it. And I was like, oh, maybe I am codependent. That label led me to the term narcissism. I always thought narcissist was just someone who was selfish. It was the first time that I was exposed to this broader idea of actual NPD, so narcissistic personality disorder, and what that actually entails. And then I found the term covert narcissism. So the type of abuse, the type of narcissism that's much harder to pinpoint, much harder to name, and everything made scary.
Wow. So there's levels of narcissism. This is interesting.
Yeah. So
Wow.
there's the world of abuse is so vast. There the even within the world of narcissistic abuse, um there's so much difference in what you can experience. But the tactics are the same. They just play out differently according to the context. So I
Mm.
was studied, I was stalked. He started testing me. I didn't realize that I was being tested. In retrospect, I remember the little smirk that he would have whenever he would successfully insult me, and I would have like a jarring reaction, but then I would talk myself out of that reaction because he's my soulmate. I wanted to continue on with whatever this is. There was that smirk. So one of the things that you'll notice from predators is they feel a sense of satisfaction when they're able to trigger you. They feel happy about it. So those were my early experiences, but there weren't. I wouldn't have been able to point to any significant red flags. I characterize it all as like, well, this is normal. This is how relationships are. You
To that point, just real quick, I want to say something because, in preparation for this podcast, I did a little research of my own and listened to this one. I sent you the video. And it was interesting. She talked about, obviously you being a Stanford grad and so forth. And this particular person, she was also Ivy League graduate. And I remember it was a TED talk I also saw about this. A colleague sent me the information. But anyway, my point is, she said that the more intelligent you are, the worse it is for you because you can rationalize anything out of the way instead of just seeing for what it is. It's something deeper. And so, talk about that, please.
just
You like, I just say woosah, right?
the deep breath that I mentioned.
Yeah, yeah,
No one prepared me for that. No one prepares most people for this.
yeah.
So when you are empathic and intelligent and analytical and reflective and forgiving, that is a beautiful combination to have. But if it's not uh, held in a person in combination with awareness of this stuff,
Right,
it's the easiest target because you can rationalize your way out of anything, right?
right.
Oh, he's having a bad day. He had a rough upbringing. I just need to explain it better. Maybe I did mishear or misunderstand. The mind plays tricks on you all the time. I understand how cloudy memory can be. I understand that the mind can actually literally make up memory and you can feel that it's very real because of how vivid your mind makes it seem to be. Knowing these things, it boggled my mind how much it made me an easier target and how it kept
Mm,
me there. So the cognitive dissonance, for those that don't know, cognitive dissonance is when you have two oppositional beliefs that are supremely contradictory, but you want to believe both, your mind wants to believe both, your subconscious wants to believe both. So your mind makes up reasons why they're both possible at the same time. And so you end up believing this person is that's harming me still really loves me. Why would those two possibly be the case? If you're really smart, you can make up 10 reasons.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
The
And
one lady,
happen
excuse me for a second.
forgiving.
No, well, just quick. The one lady in the video, she talked about how her abuser, who was our partner, was slamming her head against the wall, and she still did what you're talking about.
Yes.
Maybe reasons, the cognitive dissonance. Well, he might hit, but he just had a bad day today. Well, you know something, he almost choked me to death. I turned blue in the face. But you know something, I need to be a little bit more careful and understand how he is. I need to walk on eggshells. Let me be a little bit more empathetic, so to speak. It's crazy. I mean, the emotional abuse, to your point, is one thing, but the physical abuse is as well. It's crazy. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I interrupted you. My apologies.
It's no, no, it's okay. It's across the board.
Yeah.
So, um, physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, they all have natural impact. And by natural, I mean predictable impact. So it's something that I share with people a lot. Physical abuse, it's the easiest to be able to understand. If I punch you hard enough, you're going to develop a bruise. If I
Right.
keep punching you, that bruise is going to get bigger. If I
Right.
if I get a bat and I hit you, it's gonna you understand the logic behind what's going to happen, right? All
Hmm.
abuse tactics, they have also something like that, but that's specific to its tactic. So
Mm.
gaslighting, the goal of gaslighting is to make you doubt your reality. It's to make you think that you're the problem, that you're misunderstanding, that the problem relies, that the problem is because of you somehow. That's the natural impact, that's natural outcome of gaslighting. And so the more harm that you endure, the more that it makes you an easier victim to more abuse.
Mm.
That's just cause and effect. And then you add on top of that, as we're speaking to, a very highly empathic, highly intelligent person who can easily rationalize their way out of X, Y, and Z. It locks you in. So the way that I've described abuse to people in the past is it's very much like a cave of brainwash and torture at the same time. That the longer that you're in it, the more that the light outside of the cave itself gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And at a certain point, it feels like it ceases to exist. And that light is reality. It's the understanding of what reality really is. It's the understanding that what you are enduring is harm. And the more that you stay in it, the more that you come to believe things like, I did something to deserve this. This person doesn't mean it. This person truly loves me because if this person truly loves me, but they're hurting me, what
Right.
could be the other possible reason? I can invent 5 or 10 reasons, right? So
Right.
it's awful.
Wow. Wow.
It's
Let,
awful how much you're brainwashed during the experience of abuse.
let me ask you something really quick, because I want to get back to that brainwash concept that you just mentioned. Okay, so you talked about growing up, and you mentioned obviously there was scarcity in all forms, financial, emotional, not to mention stuff that was going on that was systemic, right?
Yeah.
Growing up in the hood, right? Um, and certainly there, just because of how, you may have been treated and others, there was a sense of low self-esteem as well to some degree. Is that correct? So please share with me your thoughts in terms of how does scarcity specifically quietly shape a woman's um, relationship standard in addition to low self-esteem and influence her decision making on a very basic level, because I believe a lot of people fall into this category. They're listening or not even listening. Please go into that.
So poverty is one of the things that I refer to as systemic abuse. Various forms of oppression and poverty I consider to be just systemic forms of abuse. And so poverty retrains or trains your mind, your nervous system, your subconscious to normalize poverty, to normalize what you experience in poverty, to normalize making do, to normalize stress. Poverty is a really stressful experience, no matter how much you try to shield your children from it.
Mm,
You're subsisting off of breadcrumbs. Abusers use breadcrumbing. That's a literal tactic that they use in order to manipulate you and to train you and groom you. And so if you're used to breadcrumbs, if you're used to there's constant stress in the house, and my parents are angry all the time, in part because of poverty, in part
right.
because of the stress that comes with that. If
Hmm.
this is what I see growing up is just angry, tired people all the time. That was my upbringing. I didn't see true joy in people's faces until I got to Stanford. It was an incredible experience to see joy around me for the first time. So
Right.
I grew up with grayness in a lot of senses, and that was normal.
Hmm.
And so, because that was normal, that's what my nervous system was wired to. That's what our nervous systems are wired to. And it can be a conscious thing, like this is all that exists. The world of dating is like this. The world of men, this is the best that I can get. But it doesn't even have to be. It could be something that just your nervous system has. That's your baseline.
Right.
Baseline is
Right.
stress. Your baseline is making do. Your baseline is pushing through, right? So
Right.
one of the other things that abuse taught me is that not just smart, intelligent women, or sorry, empathic, intelligent women are,
Hmm.
they're more targeted. The stronger that you are, the more that you'll stick around in an abusive situation. So your strength can be used against you in an abusive.
Mm.
And if you grew up in poverty, you're strong. You're strong. You
Yeah.
have to be. In order to pull yourself out of that experience and seeing what sacrifices your parents went through, there's different forms of strength that you come out with from that experience. And on top of that, a normalization of making do and breadcrumbing and pushing through. All of that works against you. And
Give me an example of breadcrumbing in this situation, what a predator would use that particular tactic. Give me an example. What is breadcrumbing? Talk about that.
yeah, so breadcrumbing is when they give you less and less and less of your needs, and it's a very intentional strategic tactic in
Interesting.
order to get you. It is to train you. It's an extreme system of reward and punishments. So I mentioned at the very beginning they employ a tactic called love bombing, right, where they shower you with praise, gifts, whatever else that they see that you need. So they're studying you. They study you. They identify what your needs are. Your your mental, emotional, physical, psychological, spiritual needs, depending on what type of abuser you're dealing with, they can study you to that degree. And then they shower you with it at first. And then the first time that you piss them off because you said no, because you had your own opinion, they take it away. And then
Mm.
keep doing that. And it gets more and more extreme. And when they give you back some of your own needs. So, for example, let's say my love language is quality time, or one of my love languages is quality time,
Right.
right? Which it was. My abuser spent ample time with me at the very beginning to the point where it was unhealthy, but I didn't recognize it was unhealthy. By the end of that experience, I literally told him that I felt like I had to make myself like sand to fit into the cracks of his life, even inside the home. And the only time that I felt a sense of connection with him was when we were playing board games with neighbors. And that's because he was putting on a mask. He had to present a certain persona with that group of people. And so that what I just explained is a really quick summary of my abuser using one of my needs, my need for time spent
Interesting.
with my significant other, and showered me with it at first, and then gradually started taking away until it was very, very, very little at the very end. That's breadcrumbing. If you are used to breadcrumbs because my parents are busy, they're working too much, my
Right.
too stressed out, I can't get the emotional safety that I need from them because we don't go on vacation, so I don't get a break from X, Y, and Z. All these things are normal in poverty. That's going to raise less red flags than if you're
Mhm.
used to all kinds of safety at home, which includes financial safety. Financial
Right.
safety is baseline necessity for people for a lot of reasons. And
Right.
you cannot have true emotional, psychological safety without financial safety. It's a lot harder to. And
Yeah.
that is used against you as well.
That's interesting. Because that makes a lot of sense. If you're used to just scarcity, any little uptick, which I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong here, you may be more invested on terms of trying to prove yourself that you deserve to be with them more so than you trying to make a case that you're not getting enough. It's
Well, often that is the case.
okay.
I was dealing with a covert narcissist. And so covert narcissists, specifically covert vulnerable narcissists, they like to play on your empathy strings. So they like to present themselves like wounded dogs that are in need of care and protection. I'm a protector. That's who I naturally am. I'm a very fiercely protective person. And so if
Yeah.
I see someone that needs help, I'm going to help them by
Okay.
whatever means necessary, including, as I've said, putting myself in harm's way many times over. And so he actually presented as someone who needed help, someone who had low self-esteem, someone who needed someone to believe in him. And I took that upon myself. I saw him as someone that I cared deeply for, that I saw the inherent value in him, like I do with everyone. And I felt a sense of protectiveness over him, of I need to make sure that he can see himself how I see him. And I remember
Right.
writing in my journal about this. Over the course of the first few months, he went from having very dull eyes to having very bright eyes. And I was like, oh, this is great. Like, this is working. This is a sign that we're soulmates, not the fact that he was extracting energy from me and resources and all sorts of other things. So I didn't have that experience of needing to prove myself. That's something that a lot of women do experience. For me, it was a more a different manipulation tactic that is also employed, but it's not nearly as talked about. It's not as often identified as a manipulation tactic to hook someone in.
Interesting, interesting. Let me ask you something, because our podcast typically, we mainly attract women. There are some men, but I think we're like 65% of our viewership are women, typically minority women. Um, High achieving, very well educated, homeowners, maybe never married or divorced, may have a child. Um, and so they would be considered that upper crust, so to speak, the upper middle class, in terms of commonly who we attract to the platform. So I'm curious, do you believe that many high achieving women are still operating from unhealed versions of themselves?
I think everybody is.
Yeah,
Show me
yeah,
one person who's not. One person on the planet who's not. The world
interesting.
is so traumatizing.
But
It's
I'm talking
so
about through the
traumatizing.
lens that may lend themselves to situations, scenarios like this. Talk about that for a second. How
So
would you reconcile that?
So I would say that if you're dealing with someone who is looking for prey, they're going to be looking for someone's psychological weakness. And we all have.
Mm,
And if you don't know what your psychological weaknesses are, if you can't identify them, then that's not to your favor because
mm,
someone else may be able to spot them and then use them to your advantage. And we all have wounding. We all have wounding. And if,
mm,
like I said earlier, if you're a big fat juicy gazelle, so meaning you have a lot of resources, a lot of love to offer, care, compassion, you've made something of yourself, so you have a home, you have friends, you have connections. If you get in the line of sight of a predator or someone who just wants someone to use, which it is very speaking to the culture of men and women in heterosexual relationships, it's normal for men to look, even subconsciously, for
hmm
a woman that they can use in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's as a cook, as someone who's going to clean for them, as someone who's going to provide them with children, as someone who's going to take care of those children, as someone who's going to provide emotional labor. This is something that a lot more women are speaking to. Is that heterosexual relationships by design right now are horribly uneven. Women
Yeah.
are going to work, they're being bosses, and then they're coming home and they're taking care of everything at home. And then they get
Mm,
tired. And then they get pinpointed as the angry Black, brown, Asian woman because we're tired,
right.
right? That's
Right.
normal. That's the soup that we're in. And then within that soup of normalized, imbalanced relationships and harm and just being objectified, being seen for what your value of your body is, to be seen as something that can provide something. Within that, you have strategic predators that are looking not just for someone that they can use as a cook, as a childbearing person, but also someone that your identity, your soul, your essence can be
Mm,
extracted from.
Hmm.
mixed up, destroyed for their sadistic pleasure. Not enough people understand sadism. It is a huge problem. It's estimated that somewhere between 1 and 10% of the population falls on the spectrum of narcissism and psychopathy and Machiavellism. It's a huge
Mm.
problem. And those personality types are driven towards positions of power where they are talking about friend groups, families, communities, organizations, or like, international institutions.
Could you give us general definitions of each one of those personalities? I know that we're talking about a continuum, but you just named three of them. Just give me a general sense. I want to make sure that we all are understanding this so people can really see what we're saying here. Please.
Yeah. So narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellism, I believe those three are considered part of something called the dark triad. Narcissism is someone who is just in very simplistic forms, very driven towards very selfish, egotistical action stemming from a place of wounded self-interest. There's a lot more that goes into that.
Sure.
And there's different forms of narcissism, covert, overt, malignant, altruistic, vulnerable. There's a lot of different classifications of narcissism.
Sure.
Psychopathy is taking that to a much higher degree. So it's someone who, and this is something that is more and more talked about now, but narcissists and psychopaths have a very different relationship to empathy than non-narcissists and psychopaths. But I would say that narcissists have something called cognitive empathy, and psychopaths have a very different relationship with empathy, where psychopaths are they're more likely to be driven towards more extreme forms of harm because they're so detached from
Mm.
human experience of emotion of I cause someone harm. I can see the impact that this is having on them. I don't want to have them experience that or me experience that. They're completely biologically through their neurological wiring disconnected from that. So there's a lot more harm that you can experience when you're dealing with a psychopath. Machiavellism is someone who is a very simplistic third grade definition is just someone with a very
Right,
like
right, right.
very iffy moral compass. So someone who is okay with using other people if it's to their advantage, but they're not going to necessarily be as extremely harmful as narcissists and psychopaths. So you'll see a lot of politicians, for
So they're
example,
probably they're more selective with it, sounds like.
they could be more
Yeah.
selective, but again, it's just that sort of wishy-washy moral compass of yeah, I'm okay with doing this. I'm okay with using to my advantage.
Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff, you do see extreme versions of it within individuals, but the tactics that they employ, minor versions of that, it's normal across our cultures.
Mm.
We live in a system that's based on win-lose. That's based on the idea of using and
Right,
and exploitation and self-exploitation to the point where people don't even know how to connect with each other
right,
anymore unless
right.
there's something to be used or something to be extracted, right? I mentioned to you during one of our earlier calls that it's a miracle that anyone is able to have a healthy relationship in this current environment that's based in competition, that's based in win-lose, that's based in extraction, that's based in objectification. How am I
Hmm.
going to have a healthy relationship with someone that doesn't see me as a whole human being? How am I going to have a healthy relationship with someone that can't take feedback because they feel it's a personal affront to their
Right,
identity, to their ego? I can't, right? But that's
right.
normal.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so the thing that I found about these specific type of personality types is whatever environment that they're in, they influence and they shift the entire culture in the favor of whatever suits them. And so given that up to 10% of the population exhibits characteristics that fall within one of these categories, that explains a hell of a lot.
Yeah, yeah. No, it really does. So again, we're here with Amparo Vazquez. She is the founder and executive director of the Women Survivors Network, and our topic is surviving abusive love. So at the beginning, I was reading off some statistics and things of that nature, right? And one of the things that you pointed out, which I thought was very enlightening, was even in the way I presented the information, it put it put emotional abuse as just like a stepping stone to physical abuse, easily saying that physical abuse is far worse, or at least that's what's inferred, than emotional abuse. And you see it very differently. So give us your angle and understanding
Yeah.
of why a person with a black eye, broken jaw, and things like that, where you see that and go, oh my God, he did that to you, versus this ongoing deterioration of who you are emotionally and things of that nature is far worse. Talk about that, please.
Yeah. So a few bits of context. I've experienced every form of abuse to one degree or another,
Okay.
all of them. The one that I experienced the worst was mental abuse. And so I can speak to how much that ravages you when you experience severe mental abuse.
So this is not something you just studied. This is something that you've actually experienced.
Yeah,
Interesting. Okay, please.
all forms. So all abuse is awful. Yeah, point blank. All abuse is awful. All abuse has some kind of negative, immediate, medium term, long term impact that people have to heal from. Whether to your point, it's a black eye, broken jaw, or it is, I've been completely eviscerated from the inside. So then there's the fact that every category of abuse also has its own spectrum. So when we're even talking about physical abuse, people often think about just hitting, right? Uh, I experienced physical abuse. He did not hit me because he couldn't leave a mark. Instead, he would yank me around. He would block doorways. He would use his body. I'm a 5 foot tall woman. He was 5'10", 5'11", something like that. He would use his body to physically intimidate me.
Mm,
The most
mm,
extreme version of on that spectrum of harm was one time he tried to start a physical fight with me, and the look on his eyes indicated that my life was in jeopardy. And I tried to run away from him, and he chased after me. And I tried to barricade myself into the bedroom, and I had to physically, forcibly push this man out, who was a lot
mm.
physically stronger than me. First time in my life that I ever considered calling the cops on someone that I knew. The very
Wow.
next day, we spent time with his family, pretending like nothing had happened at a play for a theater. He claimed that he had told his brother what had happened so that I would feel safer and willing to go. And in retrospect, no, because the way that his brother responded to me is not how you would respond to someone who had just endured what I had.
Right, right.
So it's a spectrum. Yeah.
Mm,
Emotional abuse exists on a spectrum. Mental abuse, sexual abuse exists on a spectrum. I experienced many different kinds of sexual trauma, sexual abuse, not just one kind, not just coercive sex, which is rape, which I didn't understand at the time,
mhm.
but different forms of my body, my sexuality, my sexual needs, my all of it being used intentionally weaponized against me. My understanding of myself as a woman, my understanding of myself as a desirable woman, all of it was intentionally used to harm me.
Wow.
Mental abuse, the extreme form of mental abuse, makes you lose your mind. I am
Mm,
not, again, I am not exaggerating. I am being very precise with my language. It makes you lose your mind
mm,
because it is so potentially insidious that they'll have you questioning if you really saw what you just saw, if you really heard what you just heard, if you can trust your own beliefs. How do you operate as a human being walking on the planet if you can't trust your own mind? Right? That's the
mhm.
extreme form of mental harm. This world is crap when it
Yeah.
comes to understanding mental health, mental harm, how to help someone heal from mental harm, right?
Mhm,
People that are just dealing with run of the mill depression and anxiety, how hard is it to get adequate support, adequate care to come out of that, right?
mhm.
You take someone who's been through that level of severe mental health. I had multiple professionals tell me that they couldn't help me because they didn't know how, right?
Wow.
The extreme of physical harm is things that make you end up in the hospital ultimately dead. So again, very severe things, right? Very severe things that you have to heal from. One of the biggest differences is with physical abuse, you can track your healing. With mental abuse, it's a lot harder to. Emotional abuse, it's a lot harder to. And the extreme version of mental and emotional abuse is something that's widely talked about in the world of abuse. It's notoriously notoriously so much harder to heal from that. People are
Wow.
operating for years, decades outside of abusive relationships, still debilitated by PTSD, CPTSD, unable to control their mind, unable to be able to think rationally, unable to be able to trust their minds, unable to be able to trust, still feeling deeply uncertain and unsafe in the world. And that's normal because our world, even without speaking to the experience of being ravaged by severe mental abuse, is so crap at being able to help someone with average, ordinary, but still awful mental health issues.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, okay, so, wow, this is really interesting. So, wow. So you know how you just talked about you talk about the cognitive dissonance, right? And you know how two things could be true at one time. He hit me, but he still loves me, that kind of thing, right? So, and then you talked about how it's harder to track the more emotional abuse rather than the physical abuse. Obviously, you can say how many times I've been to the doctor and stuff like whatever else. You know, and again, in preparation for this podcast, I hear just one expert who was talking about very much in line with what you do in your work, which I'm sure who you're familiar with. She talked about the importance of writing down every time you felt a certain way, even if it's like 3 months in between the next particular episode of emotional abuse, however you want to characterize it, and thought it would be important to actually journal that so that at some point you can go back and read and look at the dots, how they're connecting, right? So to speak, how, because we can easily, particularly very intelligent, you know, it must be this and so forth. Oh, he's stressed on the job, whatever case. So you can see the pattern. And then you could say, if one of your friends went through something like this, what would you say to them? So understand that's happening to you, right? So here's what I would like for you to do. And you guys, I want you guys, if you have questions, put them in the chat. If you want to say a question, you have a comment, please. This is the family cookout here. This is the virtual family cookout. So we can talk and whatever else, and you can join in on this. And the same the people on Facebook Live as well. So here's what I would like for you to do. Because what we try to do here is try to inform people and empower them to be more effective in terms of making choices while they're dating, right? So you've talked about a lot of different types of abuse. And I'm looking at some of this stuff. Okay, how can somebody really make a distinction from one versus the other? How would you just generally, I mean, you know, putting your cap on when you're back at Stanford in the Women's Center, advising girls and that whole bit, and maybe in some cases, guys, and you know the work that you do now, um, how can someone identify a predator that obviously doesn't come on and say, "Oh, I'm a predator, but I want to go out with you." That typically doesn't happen. How would you advise someone in terms of what they do, some of their some very consistent characteristics, some behaviors and things like that, in terms of, and particularly women in this case, um, they're narcissistic, they're Machiavellian, or whatever their approach is. How would you advise them?
Yeah. So I'm glad that you asked that question, and I'm trying to think through how to give a very succinct answer because
Oh
the
no,
answer.
no, take all time. We good. We good. We have all time in the world. We're good. You guys are good out there too. You guys good too, right? We
So
good.
there are certain things that are known in the world of abuse that predators do at the very beginning, but I would also say that it's very likely changing because of how the world of dating is changing because of dating apps and other things. So
Sure.
what you often find with predators at the very beginning is they like to go fast. They like to hook you in as quickly as possible. They like to sleep with
Ah,
you. They like to move in with you as quickly as possible. They like to get into a relationship with you as quickly as possible, right? However, with dating apps now, someone in theory could have 3 or 4 victims that they're stringing along. And for them, they don't care. What they're getting is something called supply, right? So it is like the extraction of life force, the extraction of resources, the extraction adoration that they get from victims. And so they could be moving fast with one victim while keeping another stringing along, and so then when they move on from victim A and now they're free, now they focus their attention on victim C. And now things move fast, but they didn't move fast at the very beginning, right?
moving
So,
fast. Interesting.
so what I would say is take caution when something is moving fast, no matter when. It is. Take caution. Take caution to pay attention to the signs of your own body. Your mind can lie to you all day, every day. It can lie to you
Hmm.
all
Hmm.
day, every day. Your body won't. Your body can't. And so if you're feeling anxious after an interaction with someone, you might not even notice it during. But if you feel anxious after an interaction with someone, don't ignore it. Pause, breathe, spend time with yourself. Write, walk, reflect. Try to figure out what is causing that anxiety. And again, it's complicated because people are dealing with anxiety disorders. We live in a very stressful, anxious time on the planet in general. There's a lot of reasons to feel anxious. But what I'm advising of spending time with yourself, that's going to help, excuse me, that's going to help you no matter what. It'll help you address the core cause of what is causing
Hmm.
the anxiety to begin with. And pausing and giving yourself time to reflect is what predators don't want you to do. So
You,
when you
you,
are
you,
ensnared by them, they cause chaos all the time because you cannot be in a state of peace around them and they can't have you noticing things.
hmm. So really quick. Okay, I know I interrupt you, but you're saying so many good nuggets here. I've got to like say, wait, man, something else came to mind. Okay, in preparation for this podcast, again, so much stuff took place. We could have started the podcast in our little warm up stuff, right?
Yeah.
You talked about, which I thought was fascinating. You talked about how we don't listen to our bodies. Please talk. I thought that was incredibly insightful. That how people can manipulate words and things like that, but our body tells us everything we need to. Please talk more about that. Just regurgitate the same conversation you and I had. Be perfect right now. It's great.
Just turn it out. Um, Abuse taught me many things. There were many things that I didn't understand about the world or myself before abuse. I learned many things. One of the things was that through many different influences in the world, schooling, culture, so many different systems, I was never taught to really pay attention to my body, let alone to be able to trust my body and then act upon what those bodily needs are. At best, people understand when they're thirsty and when they're hungry and when they want to have sex, and that's it, right? You have so many emotional, mental, physical, psychological, spiritual needs, a list of 50 plus needs that most of us are not usually attuned to. You're not
Wow.
usually attuned to the aches and pains of your body. You're not usually attuned to the racing of your heart unless you are taking a test or you're running somewhere. You're not usually paying attention to yourself. You're usually
Mhm.
here thinking about the past or the future, or you're thinking about something that's happening outside of yourself. And predators use that to their advantage because if you're not paying attention to your body, it's easier to trick you. It's easier to manipulate you. It's easier to break you. It's easier to harm you. And the biggest reason why that is so easy to do is because your mind can lie to you and it does all the time.
Mm.
A very easy, quick example that we all experience.
You need to
You
say that again for people in the back to hear that. That's pretty. You said, what does the mind do all the time?
lies to you
Yeah.
all the time. And
Mm.
we're taught that if you think something, that it's true. That if a lot of people think something, therefore that it must be true, right? It's data. If a lot of people are believing the same thing, it's data that that's a truth, right?
Right.
But I'll give you a very simple example that all of us have experienced. Our minds are naturally driven to undersell ourselves, to have accomplished something, and then to be like, it's not such a big deal. And then someone else accomplishes the same thing, and oh my God, I can't believe you did that thing. That's your
Right.
brain lying to you. That's your brain saying, hey, these two oranges, even though they're the same thing, nah, because you own this orange, it's rotten, right?
Right.
That's your brain lying to you. Your brain lies to you all the time. All the time. Your brain lies to you all the time. And in abuse, your brain lies to you all the time. That person loves me. They told me that they love me. Like it was such a fairy tale at the very beginning. Like they're just going through a rough time. I have to explain myself in these different ways. Like it'll get better if we do this. It'll get better if we do this. It'll get better if we do this. Like he really means it this time. He's gonna change. Like I just know it. Your brain lies to you all the time. And that's especially true when you're in the middle of abuse, but your body cannot. Your body
Mm.
cannot by
Hmm.
design. It cannot. However, what you can do is suddenly pay attention to the fact that your heart is racing and then use your mind to come to different conclusions, which are based in lies, and say, my heart is racing because of my environment. My heart is racing because I had this one stressful experience. instead of just paying attention to your body and, to your point, writing things down,
Hmm.
challenging your own assumptions about what's going on, like really tuning in, really checking in with the different parts of your body and the sensations present within them, and then digging deeper beyond your assumptions about what is causing X, Y, and Z in your body and in your life. So it's not even just that being present with your body, diving into your body is necessary. Yes, the world needs it crucially. I cannot highlight that enough. We need to be more in tune with our body and our needs. Foundational. We are dying because we are not in tune with our needs. But
Mm.
also, it makes you an easier victim, an easier target. When you cannot identify what your needs are, if you can't feel your body, if you can't feel your needs, if you can't say, I'm feeling this, therefore I need this. And if I do this, it'll satiate that need and I can do it on my own. I don't need it from X, Y, and Z. It makes you an easier target. It's one of the greatest defenses against bullshitters, against
Right.
abusers, against predators, is you having the ability to be able to pay attention to yourself and your body and your needs and the sensations present within you and just
Yeah.
knowing yourself more, studying yourself more. How many people literally this spend time and just focus their attention on their heart?
Mm.
That simple act is something that I learned to do after abuse. And trauma is hard to heal. It is hard to heal. It is notoriously hard to heal. The level of trauma that I sustained was extreme. I did not feel human anymore. I had
Mm.
severe PTSD, CPTSD. I was screaming from the psychological pressure. My identity was gone. My personality was screwed. I keep trying to cuss and I keep holding myself back.
No. Look, let
And
it fly. Let it fly. Let it fly. Go ahead and drop your F bomb. It's all good.
that's right. And
It's adults here.
I
All
had
adults
to
here.
I had to retrain myself in foundational things, how to breathe, how to think, how to connect with what my basic needs because I was suppressing.
Right.
And so I learned so much from that experience. And I learned how widespread this is, not just the extreme experiences of abuse, but how the cultural fabric from which we from which we come out of and into these experiences, they make you an easy target. So something that I
Hmm.
shared with you during our earlier calls was that the world is currently designed right now to make it easy to be a victim and difficult to escape, difficult to heal, difficult to rebuild, difficult to be able to lead afterwards. And the thing that I want to do with my organization is flip it, make it harder to be a victim, easier to escape, heal, rebuild, and lead afterwards. And that's one of the things. And it's crucial. And in this world, we have been lied to a lot about well being, about self care, about our needs, about how to take care of them, about it's been very highly commercialized and the approach is often very surface level. It
Hmm.
doesn't focus on the entire body, mind, soul of the person. It doesn't take a look at their ancestral patterns. It's too limited. It's too limited.
Hmm.
And in
So,
order
so
to flip that, we have to flip that as well.
yeah, I want you to get to your organization in a minute, but I want you to say something to the men. So, for instance, let me kind of set this up. So, one thing I just find interesting, just in general, I guess men and women, but particularly maybe women, maybe more less at a deficit here, that it doesn't matter what you see or what you feel. He said this. You haven't spent time with me in 3 weeks, but you say you love me, and then I caught you already, hugging on some girl and kissing on like that, but you say you love me, and we tend to believe all that. So that's kind of really deep. So that whole sliding scale of cognitive dissonance and what you call it is very interesting. I remember growing up, and I had some trifling uncles. I probably even knew when I was a young man they were trifling, but they're uncles, and everybody listened to their uncles, right? They were funny and whatever else. And generally speaking, right? I see my cousin Buki on here. I'm not just talking about Pawpaw side of the family, uncles. To my mom's side of the family. Anyway, so so
Call out.
I remember
Yeah.
several conversations with these uncles and some of my older cousins too. It was like it was all about game. It was never how do you court a woman. It was never about how you treat a woman right. It's how you can get as many girls as possible. You take every cookie that you can get, if you know what I mean by say cookie, obviously. Um, and there's a certain way how you control your woman. You make sure that you don't take that. Well, that you know you need to man up. You ain't gonna be no simp. You're gonna do blah 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 blah. And while that may be a little bit more rough around the edges in terms of where it grew up, I think that kind of still exists in our society even today. Now I see that me and Joel, the only men on here, at least in the Zoom, the maybe men out there in the Facebook world and on social media listening to this. And I think it seems like there's a very thin line between what you're describing and what we've normalized. Please help. What would you say to the men in terms of we need to in terms of us recalibrating things in such a way? I mean, because you
Gosh.
said a lot here, and I'm like saying, shoot, this is crazy. But please do bring us all some knowledge with some things that we might need to sort of revisit, refine, and completely redo in terms of our way that we actually think about women and the whole process of trying to, lure you guys in as a potential partner.
Yeah. Oh God, it's such a great question. There's so many things that I can share about this.
Right.
I'll share a few things. So one is you can't dehumanize and objectify someone else without doing the same thing to yourself. But most people don't know this, right?
Mhm.
But again, the mind may lie to you, but the body does not. And so across the landscape of humanity right now, there's so much, there's so many issues, there's so much health problems. There's the male loneliness epidemic, right?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of structural systemic problems that point to something underlying them, which I think a lot of it, the core root of it is a lack of humanity, a lack of connection to our own humanity, a lack of connection to our own emotions, a lack of connection to our own bodies, our own needs, and being trained by different forces to extract them through exploitation from others through nefarious means. And I sort of alluded to this before that when you're speaking strictly about two different groups, very hypersimplification, but two different groups, and one is considered more of the oppressor class, and more is considered more of the oppressive class. So speaking to privilege, right? One is considered the more privileged systemically group, and one is considered the less privileged group, and even that requires a deeper conversation because a lot of men now they would argue, oh, I don't have the privilege that you're speaking about, but most of the world is ruled by men. So I could just present that one bit of information to say that speaks to the level of privilege that men still receive right today. Is most of the world is still ruled by men. So within that, I lost my train of thought.
I thought the world was ruled by Beyonce. I thought she ruled the
It
world. No,
should be. It
it ain't,
absolutely should be.
it ain't
Um,
Queen Bee, not Queen Bee.
It should be, it should be. But just bringing it back to what I was saying is it's easier when you're the target of some of these obvious tactics that the tactics are what they are and the impact has a certain kind of impact, right? As a woman, it's not uncommon to be stalked, as I briefly shared before this call that I was stalked once again a few weeks ago, or
Mm,
to be seen only as a thing that can provide what's in between my legs, or to provide the thing that emerges from in between my legs after insemination, right? It's not uncommon. And so women are very familiar with the experience of dehumanization and objectification. But you can't dehumanize and objectify another without doing that to yourself. And part of the reason why that happens is if men are taught to only think about the acquisition of their needs through the extraction of another and through forcible extraction, you don't really ever get to know yourself. Of course, we have a
right.
loneliness epidemic. Are you kidding me? How could
Yeah.
you not?
Right.
You've been trained for generations that you should only have very specific needs. And
Mm-hmm.
those specific needs, you should only acquire them through playing the game, to your point. And your ego and your identity rest on you being able to do that successfully a lot of times. How do you know yourself?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know your needs? How do you get in touch with what those needs are? Of course, you're going to keep doing this because it's the only way that you know how to deal with the ego wounding that inevitably emerges when you're not able to do this. You run around in
Mm-hmm.
circles. And so, one of the things that I see is a really big difference in the culture of women as a whole, generalization, versus a culture of men as a whole, generalization, is that there's a much deeper focus on growth, deep growth, deep going to the root of myself growth with women than men. And I think men could really use not just community, not just compassion, empathy towards themselves and
Mm-hmm.
towards others, but
Right.
also that deeper, deeper, deeper going within the self, understanding the composition of their own ego and their identity and challenging the composition of that. And then everyone will benefit. So what I always think in terms of win-win-win. And it's a lot harder to convince someone, hey, change your behavior for the benefit of another. You can be very service oriented. That's how I am.
Right.
But a lot of people are not like that. So how do you change the behavior of people who are not naturally inclined to think that way? You convince them to change their behavior because it benefits them.
Mm.
And getting in touch with their own needs and seeing themselves more as a whole human being that's worthy and deserving of satiating their needs through healthy means, whether it's on their own or through healthy connection, would completely change how they view women. It would take time. I have to question that statement because that's just one part of the equation, right? But
Okay.
then that part of the equation, necessary, essential. Nothing can happen without it, right? Then there's challenging millennia old assumptions about women and relationships and life and purpose and what's possible with all of the above, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As a collective, as a people, we have not scratched the surface of how enjoyable life can be. We have not,
Right. Right.
because we're just surviving to subsist and subsisting to survive.
Right.
We're extracting from in order to subsist. And that's pitiful. That's pittance compared to self-generating joy and seeing myself as a whole human being that's worthy of love, and so are you.
Mm-hmm.
And approaching that connection with tenderness and care and awareness. And I, as putting myself in the position of a man, I've done enough of the work where if I get challenged a little bit, my identity ego feathers don't get riled up, right? Which then makes it safer for the woman. Women are, it's gonna get so fired up. Even in an average, ordinary relationship, women feel unsafe. And that's not
Mm.
speaking to the extremes of like the vast majority of us that are harmed by the men that we're in a relationship with or someone that we know. And
Yeah.
the vast majority of domestic homicides happen to women who are pregnant or women who are leaving abusive relationships, right? Even that extreme aside, women feel deeply unsafe in connection to men because men are not in touch with their own emotions. And so men, when you and again, average ordinary experience, if men can't understand and validate their own emotional needs, how are they going to do that with another? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Being in an experience where you're being invalidated, it's psychologically unsafe. If I give feedback to you and you get angry at me, I feel unsafe.
Sure.
If I present a different opinion to you, I feel unsafe. If if I tell you I need something that you're not currently providing and you can't handle that because your ego rests on being perfect all the time and always providing, I feel unsafe. And then women shrink themselves. Why do you want that? Of course you don't, right? Unless you're a sadistic person, in which case you do. But if you're not a sadistic person, you're going to be at least curious about that dynamic. Oh, I hadn't thought about that, how someone might be shrinking themselves because I'm not creating an environment in which they can they can bring more of their authentic self,
Mm-hmm.
all the way to repulsed. Right? It should repulse you. It's human to feel repulsed by harm
Yeah.
and normalization of harm. And that's our baseline. That's why abuse is so common. Of course, it's going to be so common. How could it not?
Mm-hmm.
When that's our baseline, that's our cultural fabric that is normal. How could we not? There's so much work to be done to change all of this, including the
Right.
cultural fabric. And there's just so many entry points that are needed. And a lot of it boils down to different forms of education,
Right.
educating people about their needs and identifying their needs and different ways of satiating those needs without harming another.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Education around these types of abusive situations, because again, they're really common, anywhere from 1 to 10%. And I lean more towards the 10%, given my experiences.
Sure.
And knowing that that type of person seeks positions of power, they feed off of it. There's a sadistic sense of pleasure and joy over having power over someone. They exist, they're all
Interesting.
over the place, right?
Yeah.
So, education around that. And time, oh my God, time. We're so stressed out. We barely give ourselves times to shower and brush our teeth, barely,
Yeah.
let alone to satiate other potential needs. Time for rest, time for calm, time for
Mm-hmm.
silence, time for reflection and growth. You're not going to grow if you don't give yourself time.
Yeah.
Time to read, time. And it is, it's a loaded term because everyone is not just so stressed out, everyone is so scarce right now in terms of time. There's a deep crisis of time scarcity right now
Mm-hmm.
that so many of us are experiencing. And so we think I can't do this. I don't have time to meditate. I don't have time to sleep. I don't have time to chat with a friend. I don't have time to do all this because I have to do these other things and I have to keep going and I have to keep accomplishing more things and I have to keep gathering things. And that's our baseline.
Yeah.
And our
Yeah.
baseline makes it easy. And I think it's intentional. It makes it
Yeah.
easy for the really scary predators to then run around and do whatever they want
Yeah. No, that that
and
that
harm
that's
as many fucking people as they want.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's good. Tell us about the Women's Survivors Network, the goal, the mission, what you guys do, what you looking to do, and who's the type of person that should be reaching out to you guys, and how can you guys support them, and what are
Yeah.
their concerns may be?
So the Women's Survivors Network is a survivor-led nonprofit. We're working to create an ecosystem of support to help survivors of abuse, whether you've experienced it at home, at work, or within society at large. So we're focusing with home and work to begin with, familial, relational, workplace abuse. Now helping them navigate the entire process of understanding the fuller spectrum, the fuller picture of abuse and trauma to eventually escaping. That's going to be the last piece that we're going to add because it's the most delicate and serious and dangerous.
Hmm.
uh, Stabilizing, healing, rebuilding, and then ultimately leading. My vision is to create a world, is to be a drop in the bucket that helps to create a world full of leaders that come from challenged, marginalized backgrounds that are empathic, that are service oriented, that have been through a lot of shit.
Hmm.
And they've received support and empathy and care and validation and resources and network in order to then take all of those experiences and their natural drive towards support others, and they emerge as warriors and warriors that are dedicated to not just guarding their own hearts and protecting themselves now, really for the first time, but their families, their communities, their organizations, the collective as a whole that are focused on cooperation, that are focused on win-win and not this bullshit competition, win, lose, 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 lose based system that we have.
Right.
So the idea is to help women through all these stages and ultimately emerge with a wider and wider and wider network of survivors that are specially equipped and supported and resourced to then make change, whether it's within their families, their communities, their organizations, or the world at large. And we just got started. So launched in July of last year, started to really build it out in September, really, really build it out in December. We just got our full founding board set up, which is very exciting. We have a couple of people here actually, which shout out to my fantastic board members.
Oh, nice, nice.
So we're early in the process of building out what, given this large vision, what it's going to look like in tangible terms and what the pilot is going to look like. And there's a few different sort of pieces of this vision that are starting to come together. So wraparound services to help someone navigate the process of living, surviving, healing after abuse. For example, partnering with different organizations that provide different services that they're necessary for the process of healing, for the process of rebuilding. But as a survivor, you might not even know that these organizations exist, let alone in a state of PTSD and CPTSD and trauma and financial destitution and housing instability. How do you get access to these different things, right?
Hmm.
So that's what we're in the process of doing, is gathering allies, partnerships. We also provide workshops and trainings to different organizations and teams to all sorts of topics under the umbrellas of abuse and trauma, workplace abuse, relational abuse, helping organizations to create trauma-informed cultures, to train teams how to help survivors that are either present within the teams or as clients. There's a lot of different topics that fall under the umbrellas of abuse and trauma. And that's part of these larger picture of just educating the world. The world is severely undereducated, underinformed about
Oh,
the
big time.
wider picture of abuse and trauma. We also provide, we're going to be providing survivor navigation support. So the idea is I wanted to create something that was a solution to what I experienced. What I experienced was horrifying. Like I said, I
Mhm.
didn't feel human. I had severe PTSD, CPTSD. I had to navigate all this on my own. I didn't know where to start. I was financially destitute. I had no sense of self. I had no identity. I was a woman of color who had worked really, really, really hard to get to the point where she didn't have to do the one thing that I had to do to survive, which is work a cashier job, because I had so much brain damage that I couldn't do anything else.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I had to do so many things on my own with a ravaged brain, with a crappy support system that just was undereducated, underinformed. And it wasn't from ill intention. It was just, I was harmed in so many different ways because of the structural issues that I started to paint this picture in my head of, man, there's so much that needs to be done. People need to understand that abuse is not just physical abuse.
Right.
People who have experienced harm, they need support in being able to get access to the different resources. They need financial support in being able to get access to this. They need to not be going to do this alone. They need someone to validate them. They need someone to express who can express care when they most need it. Because that's what you need. That helps to heal some of your trauma. Um, and then help them go through the entire process all the way through long-term healing. So not just crisis support, which is very important, but the process of healing takes years, if not decades, depending on what you've been through. It takes a
Wow.
long time to heal. But if you know what, if you're presented with the support that you need to go through that process, if it's not just you stumbling along, finding the different things that you need, it's going to make it shorter. It's going to make it easier. And so I wanted to create something that was the antidote, the antithesis of what I had lived, because
Hmm.
it didn't exist and I needed to exist.
Wow. Wow. Well, that's pretty phenomenal. So we got just a few minutes left, and want to open it up to anyone who has a question, have a comment. Feel free to take yourself off mute, and take us, join us on here and share your thoughts. You got a question? I mean, there's a lot said here. We can go on and on and on and on, but we're gonna kind of come up. But I'm sure somebody's got something to say or a question or something. I mean, this was pretty provocative and pretty informative. I mean, wow. Don't all speak at once.
So what I can share too, meanwhile people think, feel free to share, feel free to not, no pressure.
Yeah.
Um, it's it's a big honor to be in the experience of starting to build this out
Yeah.
and starting to see it come to life.
Hmm.
Experiencing abuse is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Escaping is a nightmare. Healing is a
Hmm.
nightmare. And what I realized from that is how widespread that nightmare is and how much work is needed to help the individual through that, but then the domino effect that that can have on the entire world around them.
Hmm.
And so I'm very grateful that I've gotten to this point in time. It was a very difficult journey,
Sure.
very difficult. Very grateful that I get to turn these experiences into solutions and to work with other phenomenal, incredible people to do this
Right.
thing. The board itself, yay, thank you. Um, my board is full of survivors. Most of us are women. Most of us are survivors that have gone through at least relational, if not workplace, or both. And that's been my vision from the very beginning. These solutions have to be created by survivors. I think that's
Hmm.
it's illogical to say the least. And it's so normalized, but it's so illogical to see organizations try to create solutions without the people in the room that the solutions are for. It's so illogical, but it's so normal. And I was going to flip it on its head from the very beginning. That's what happens when you grew up in the hood. You grew up around a lot of different challenges and problems. And then you went to a very highly regarded institution with a lot of really well meaning and very privileged people. And I saw that contrast. And
Hmm.
now I get to put it all into one package, which is really great.
Yeah. I mean, it's a real fascinating journey. Marissa shares, she's an incredibly thoughtful presentation. I'm always learning so much from you. She must be one of your board members, right?
It is.
If you could give one piece of advice or words of wisdom for someone going through this right now, what would you say? And excuse me, what do you wish someone would have said to you when you were deep in it?
That's such a great question. Thank you so much, Marisa. So there's two ways of thinking about that too, right? Someone that's going through the experience of abuse versus someone who's going through the experience of healing afterwards. Healing was awful. So I was rescued, and shortly after I was rescued, the person who rescued me said, "Now the hard part is coming." And I was like, "What?"
Hmm.
I just went through hell. What do you mean the hard part is coming? And even they had no idea what was to come because they didn't know the level of damage that I had sustained. I honestly haven't met anyone who has endured the level of trauma that I have and sustained the level of damage that I did at the mind.
Right.
It was hellish. It was awful. And if I'm speaking to that me that was early in the experience, I honestly would just tell her I love her.
Mm.
She needed someone who wouldn't doubt her, wouldn't minimize her pain. My abuser presented himself as a damaged dog, right? A wounded dog as very benign, as very non-threatening. So I didn't have people like immediately believe me for some time. And in fact, one of my friends, very well-meaning, within days, he was like, "You have to forgive your abuser." And I was like, "I'm dealing with such a deep level of trauma that I am screaming, and you're telling me to forgive this person. Fantastic." And that's well meaning and normal, right? She just
Hmm.
needed someone to hold her, to
Mm.
tell her, I love you. I'm here for you.
Mm.
That's it. That would have broken me open so fast if I had just received that. And that's, again, part of why I'm building this out. Community has to be at the center of it. People
Yeah.
who have been through what you've been through, who have the empathy and the skill set to be able to see you and not minimize you and not invalidate you and not believe the stories that your abuser tries to present about themselves about you. You can't heal without that. It's
Yeah.
so that is what I would tell that me.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Now, how can someone reach the Women Survivors Network, reach you? They have questions, they need help. How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so A lot of our information is on our website. It's a one pager. We're going to build it out. It'll be a much more robust website down the line this year. But you can go to wsnetwork.org, and that'll give you some high level information about who we are and what we do and how to get in touch at the very bottom. You can also email me directly. So you can email me at amparo@wsnetwork.org, and I'm happy to respond. And as I said, we're in the early process of building out what our pilot wraparound services are going to look like. And very happy to provide individual survivor support. Anyone who is going through something really heavy, really deep right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is just my latest effort at being able to provide support for survivors. I also have a background as a coach. And so very happy to provide support for people who are going through very difficult experiences. You're not alone.
Yeah. And
You
give us
know,
give us that website address one more time, please.
yeah, wsnetwork.org.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Well, again, this has been fantastic, very enlightening and sobering on so many different levels, but yet it's a conversation that we needed to have way long overdue, as we've seen not just on the news this past week, but just how the stuff goes on all the time. I think they said that the 20,000 calls on any given day of
That's
some kind of domestic violence thing on a daily basis. Unreal, unreal. And then obviously the 1,500 deaths that occur every year as well. It's crazy.
that's I'm sure a small percentage of the women that would call.
Yeah, that's a good to talk about that too. You said that even though we had all these statistics, why it's clear those numbers are not truly representative and lowball what actually is taking place.
Yeah, yeah. It took an extreme level of damage for me to get to the point where I even sent a text message to help,
Mm,
but I was being harmed all along the way.
wow.
So
Wow.
I can tell you from personal experience what goes into the process of you just don't call until you're at a very extreme moment of need. And that's especially true if you're dealing with mental, emotional, covert sexual abuse.
Sure, sure, sure. Wow. Well, again, we want to thank Amparo Vazquez, and she is the founder and executive director of the Women's Survivors Network. We've talked about this evening surviving abusive love. Feel free to follow us on Instagram at underscore urban birds and bees. And our next podcast, I think, is going to be coming out in just about a month, and we'll kind of continue this conversation talking about narcissism, and we'll be talking about that with Rebecca Zung, the one and only Rebecca Zung. She is a very interesting person. She's an attorney, and she tells women how to deal with narcissists. So that should be quite enlightening. But anyway, thank you all for tuning in. Um, I am Dr. Kerry Neal, host and moderator for Urban Birds and Bees. Until next time, this will be posted on YouTube, and please follow us and subscribe on YouTube as well at Urban Birds and Bees podcast as well. But this will be up tonight. All right. You guys have a great time, great night, and thank you all everybody in the virtual land and also in the Facebook and social media land for tuning in. Have a good night, everybody.